You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, no, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with Lisha Davidovits. As a success coach, Lisha brings a powerful impact to high-achieving millennials who have a history of success and are now stepping into new roles. Her expertise is key in helping them navigate those transitions with less stress and more joy in ways that are dynamic, interactive, and supportive. They accelerate their success while staying true to their authentic selves. Lisha's skills are enhanced by 20 years of client-face experience, mental fitness expertise, and degrees in psychology, rhetoric, and communications. I know I said that wrong as well, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And in her free time, her passions are spending time with family and friends, baking, exercising, dancing, learning, and living with gratitude and appreciation. This girl talks our talk, right? Lisha, thank you so much for being here and for letting me say your name over and over again till I got it right. It's really a beautiful name.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. It's such a privilege. Thank you for having me as your guest.
One of the things we do here, and I think one of the reasons we have so many listeners, by the way, we're almost at 200,000 subscribers, so thank you guys for tuning in all the time. But one of the things that we do is share a story of hope. And I would love it if you would share one of your stories of hope with all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to do so. So growing up, I was very much kind of the good girl and, very much living into being a pleaser, the good girl conditioning, all of that, and wanting acceptance and acknowledgement from others. And as a result of doing that, I kind of lived within this persona of what I felt others expected or wanted me to be. And as I went through life, then I looked at experiences that would gain acceptance or approval from others and really became something that was more representing what I felt would be really well looked upon by other people and by my parents and then later with friends. And as I then came into my 20s and was in college, I realized, gosh, this person's just not even me and not who I am. And there was a sense of feeling lost. And, I know others too, where they have that sense of, who am I? I've been this other person for so long. Who is the real me? And that essence of who one is can get lost. And some people never discover it. They then go on to professions that are based on what their parents or others said they'd be good at. They become lawyers or doctors, and they follow that path based on what others have encouraged them to do. And I was going down that path. I never even dated because I was concerned about being promiscuous or that not being well looked upon if I was, fooling around with guys. And there was so much that I wanted to do that I didn't do because there was that fear of disapproval. And so for anyone who's listening where you've had those experiences, I can tell you firsthand that if you are experiencing that, it doesn't always have to be that way. It starts with that awareness of I'm living out of alignment with who I am. There's something that I keep pushing down that I'm not allowing myself to be, and then getting curious about what that is. And I found myself really drawn to people that were more risk takers, that were those that, didn't ask for permission. They just lived their lives fully and they just went for it rather than overthinking it in their heads. And they were kind of there was the bad boys. And it wasn't that there was this danger factor with them that I liked. I later realized it was that they were encouraging me to take more chances, to not be as cautious, to not be as concerned. One guy I was dating, he was like, you've got a great figure. Why do you cover it up with these bulky sweaters? And it's well, I don't want to seem, like I'm wearing things that are too revealing or too this or that. And he was like, let's go shopping. And he encouraged me to see I could be myself without going to that extreme of being too promiscuous or too proper. I'd always been very proper. So it started with that, of me being you know what? I'm a woman. I embrace my femininity and I'm going to live more into that. And I loved it. It was liberating. That was one of the first times in my life when I gave myself permission. And that was the key word, was giving myself permission to be parts of myself that I had said weren't okay to be. It wasn't okay to be that risk taker, to go out there and be sexy. And boy, once I unleashed that, then there was just so much abundance that came, and the joy and fulfillment that I felt. It was like all of this energy, all of this weight was liberated. And then professionally, doing more of what I wanted to do. And the beautiful thing with that is that then it had this continuing process where as soon as, employers would say like, oh, you should do things this way or that way, I was like, I've been in a box all these years. I'm not going back in a box. And so then came this like strength of, being like, this is who I've become. This is who I am. And I am going to fully step into that and honor that and be that with all that I have. And it's been one of the most important things that's ever happened to me, that learning, because it's whenever people are, trying to encourage me to go one way or the other way, I now have this really steadfast determination and willingness to say no, even if others might not like that answer, even if that might not be well looked upon. I answer to myself now. And in doing so, I'm living my life even more fully and even more true to who I am as a result. So
Wow.
I encourage others to take inspiration from that.
I love that story because I think a lot of women relate to that. I was the person who always said no if I wanted to say no. And when I was younger, my mom would always say, if you get into trouble, Jana, I know it was because it was something you chose to do. And she was right. But having said that, I did get lost in who I really was, because first I was someone's daughter, right? And you're built into that mold, and someone's sister, and then you're somebody's mother and somebody's wife. And even when they're introducing, oh, that's so-and-so's mom, that's so-and-so's wife, right? And your identity keeps getting lost. And then they all leave. They go to school. Now I'm somebody's grandma. But it's hard. Like, who are you really? And I love that you gave yourself permission to be exactly who you wanted to be.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's, always been now something as I've taken on different roles, getting married, becoming a parent. Like, it's interesting how, because I've been there, done that, then as soon as someone tries to get me to conform again of like, you should parent this way, or, I have Latin in-laws and they're like, you should be cooking and cleaning for your husband. And I'm like, I married him because I knew we'd have an egalitarian relationship. That's what I want. So no, I'm not conforming to that. And I love it in my work as a coach, empowering women to really step into like, who do you want to be? What's true about what you're telling yourself you need to do, shouldn't do, need to say yes or no to? And it's just, really invigorating.
I totally love that. And I love that you're taking that into relationships, and we don't conform for our significant others. We conform for ourselves to become better people, the people we want to see ourselves showing up as. And I think that's so funny. I hear all the time in relationship therapy, when we're working with someone, that they're not the person I married, because since day one, you started trying to change them.
Right.
They don't know who they are anymore. They are not the person you married.
Right. Exactly. And it's so important too, to go into a marriage really knowing who you are and standing up for that, not being like, oh, well, my husband really wants someone who does this, so I'll do these things. And that's the pleaser mentality again. So you're not acknowledging and respecting your own boundaries. And there's only so long that you can take that. And then people get to a point and they're like, I'm fed up. I do all of this stuff. I'm, giving all of this. And it's like, well, but that was your choice. Your choice was to say yes and to really, not honor those boundaries. So we need to show up in a relationship honestly, first with ourselves, first and foremost, and then with that other person, so that they're getting exactly who they see. It's not like a bait and switch.
So how does this moment in your life, this beautiful story you just shared with us, how does that help you show up and serve your clients the way you do now?
Well, it's great because I have this enthusiasm for, who I am authentically. And when I hear a client talking about, this piece of them, like I had a client who was talking about, things like just seem so serious and heavy. And I said, let's look back at your life and look at your essence and your inner child. What did you love to do? And they looked back at a picture and they were like, oh, I used to love riding Hot Wheels. And I'm like, tell me about that. What was that like? And they're like, I felt the wind in my hair. And they were getting so excited. And because that resonates with me of looking at like parts of ourselves that we're not honoring, then I am able to really I see that and latch onto it for the sake of my clients and be like, what would it be like to turn the volume up on that in your life now, to turn up the fun, to turn up the playfulness, whatever you haven't been living into that's a part of your essence. And they get so excited and it starts to open things up so much more expansively because they connect with parts of themselves that have been lost, that have been forgotten, that have been neglected. And then that brings such resonance and fulfillment, which then becomes a perpetuating cycle of, they've got that and then they want more. And it gives them that permission and that sense of being liberated from what has weighed them down.
I love that you take them back to their childhood because some things that we enjoyed as children, we've learned to not so much as adults. I loved being in the rain, loved it. I couldn't wait for it to be raining. I wanted to splash in the puddles, right? I didn't care that I was soaking wet. But then I worked in Seattle for several years and I hated it. I started to hate the rain because I'm going in between meetings and I'm getting soaking wet. My makeup's running. And
Yeah.
I started to not like it and avoid being in it with the umbrellas and hiding from it. But then I got to a point where I want to love the rain again. And I started going back out and getting wet and letting my makeup get all messy and remembering what it was that I enjoyed. So it's really nice that you're bringing them back to something they loved in their childhood and letting them reconnect what that feeling was like and, living in that moment again.
Right, absolutely. It's so important. And I had similar experiences where growing up, I was always told don't get your dresses messy, don't get dirty. And so there was that caution. I wouldn't go hiking because that's in the dirt. And I wouldn't do all of these things because I might get dirty. And so once I started saying wait a minute, what's true about that? Who cares if I get dirty? I can clean myself up. That's okay. And so then I started to, find things that I could enjoy that I hadn't given myself the opportunity to enjoy because of, all of these stories that I created in my head of what I shouldn't do, what I should do. And one interesting story too was there was someone I was talking to who had a client in quality control. And that person was like, gosh, my life just seems so serious. I'm in quality control. And looking back on that inner child, they were like, I was fun. I was playful. I was, lighthearted, but I'm in quality control. I can't be fun and silly. And so then there was that questioning of well, what's true about that? And they were like, well, yeah, maybe there's some of that I could bring, some lightheartedness. And so they found ways to weave that into their role, into how they showed up at work. And it really transformed the culture within that team because all of a sudden there was this lightness. They were actually having fun with each other. There were stronger connections. They were able to let go more. So we need to be careful about the stories that we tell ourselves of how we need to be, how things need to be, and really question how do I know that to be true for sure? And how can I turn the dial up on it? What can I do giving myself permission to live into that?
So I love that you're turning the dial up on that because that is amazing. I know that when I was younger, raising my kids, I was in that where everything had to be perfect. They had to look perfect. The house had to be perfect. I had to be perfect at my job. The car had to be cleaned every week. And that was a lot of work. It was exhausting because you never achieve perfection. You just don't. There's always something not right, which thank goodness. And it wasn't until I got in my 50s, I'm getting ready to turn 60. And it wasn't until I got in my 50s that I just didn't care.
Oh, nice.
Right? You just get to a point where you're my hair's stuck up in the back. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that? And it wasn't until then that you kind of gave the bird to life, I guess, and said, I don't care anymore. This is how I'm showing up. So take it or don't.
Right, exactly. Yes, and I have that side of me too, that kind of, that perfectionist stickler side. And I started to realize, this is compromising my relationships. If I'm getting worked up because the kids left a big mess again, and I'm like, oh, this room is a mess again. Why can't we keep it clean? One, does it really matter that the room is messy? Only 80% of things actually need to be just right. I'm sorry, only 20% need to be just right. The rest is in the 80%. And the house being perfectly neat, that's definitely like good enough is good enough. And it's not worth compromising relationships because people aren't meeting our standards. If we expect 80% of things to be perfect, that's an unrealistic expectation and is not allowing us to really be our best selves, to be relaxed, present, peaceful, positive, because we're too worked up on the little details, which is a great quality to have, to notice the details, to be attentive. Those are gifts, but taken to the extreme, it starts to sabotage relationships and happiness and even productivity. I used to like write out lines on every single thank you note to make sure every line was straight. And looking back, I'm like, gosh, there's so much that I could have done that would be a much better use of time than writing all those lines. That goes in the 80% bucket where good enough is good enough. Heart surgeon, that's the 20%. You want to make sure it's just perfect. So it's, kind of this like check-in of, okay, reality check here. Does it need to be perfect or not?
That is a really great analogy to explain it, because I agree. And I think that when we are able to see that 80-20 split and actually embrace it, we're going to have way better relationships. Because I know as a mom of 4, like I was so hard on my kids because I was so neat. It was like I had OCD obsession for sure. And I remember that most of my time with them was placing orders for things to be done, redone.
Yeah.
And I still to this day can remember the look on one of my children's face when I went on a rampage because their room was a mess again. And then looking at their face, looking at me thinking, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing?
Totally. Yeah, I've been there too. Like, it's not, I kind of look at myself and I'm like, is this worth it? Is it worth like having a mini meltdown over this? And, and having my child who just wants that love and time with me and acceptance to, have me like kind of just raining down on them over things that really like don't need to matter. So I've gone through a lot of personal work in trying to just quiet some of these saboteurs, ways that I self-sabotage with my stickler or the perfectionist, the pleaser, the hyperachiever. So, in my journey coming into myself more, then I'm like, okay, this is who I am. How can I let the best parts of who I am, my true self, shine even more? And so a lot of that has come with quieting these saboteurs, strengthening my mental fitness, so that way I'm not getting triggered and hijacked nearly as much as I used to, which is amazing.
So for all of your parents who are listening, you're not messing up, by the way. There's no perfect parenting, I promise you. And no matter how good you are, you're going to look back and know you could have done things differently. But let me give you a little secret. At some point in your life, if you are blessed enough, you get something called a do-over, and they're called grandkids. And when they come over, they trash the house, and my kids are like, who are you?
Yeah.
I don't even recognize you. Like, they break things. It's okay. I clean it up. They're like, who are you? But you get a do-over, and yay. I'm so grateful for the do-over.
Yes. Well, and even now, like, my kids are still young. And sometimes when I respond in a way that is different from what I wish it had been, I'll say to them like, hey, you know what, if I had a do-over, this is the way that I would have done it. Can we do it again? Because then that teaches them for themselves that they can, kind of give themselves permission to mess up. For me, fail is feeling alive in life. It's just experiencing life. It's living life, giving oneself permission to mess up, because we all mess up. And then to know that we can do a do-over, we can try again, we can look back, reflect, learn, and grow as a result. It's helpful to looking into like your future self and yourself as a wiser elder, looking back at how you want to say you were as a parent. That also helps put things in perspective. How is it that you would have liked to have seen yourself showing up for yourself, for your children? And based on that, what types of adjustments can one make in the present in order to make that future, that reality, in order to make what you see looking from your elder wiser self, what it actually turns out to be?
So who is looking for you? Like, who are you serving? What kind of client is coming to you and asking for help?
There are people that are, as you said, high achievers. There are those that have a history of success, and they are ambitious, they're driven, they're really motivated. And as a result, sometimes they just get caught up. They end up getting in their own way of success because they're stuck in their head. They get this anxiety and stress, and they're pushing, pushing, pushing. They feel like, they're not doing all that they could. They're not showing up as they'd like to for themselves and in relationships, but they don't know what to do. They want there to be more in what they're experiencing in life, and for things to not feel so hard, and to kind of come from their best self more, to relieve some of that stress and anxiety, but still be just as successful, if not more so. And so they're kind of looking for some guidance, for some support, and bridging that gap from where they are as a high achiever and to where they want to be as a high achiever who's happy and calm and patient and compassionate and has that laser focus, and actually like performing even better as a result of being able to have that shift. So it's about like being our best selves, and having positive experiences as a result, and still, not compromising who we are, still living authentically.
I love that. I know that I was a super high achiever, and I definitely put my relationships on the back burner. And it wasn't until getting very ill and being told I had just a few weeks to live that I realized, when people say to you on your deathbed, you're not going to wish you did better at work or that you put in
Yeah.
more hours. Like, what I was craving was to create a memory with my new grandson, who was only 9 weeks at the time. And I realized how important that was and what I missed. Like, I just missed that whole part. So if I could say anything to the younger people right now who are high achievers, who are trying to do it all and be perfect at it, get
Yeah.
someone like Lisha to work with that will help you like do that. You can still be a high achiever and
Yeah.
understand that there's a balance, right? There's some things that can just wait. And at the end of the day, what are you going to look back on?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, thinking about, in that future self, what do you want to look back and see? And you hear about so many people in their later years, they don't look back and say, I wish I had worked harder. I wish I had earned more money. It's, I wish I had been more present. I wish I had had stronger relationships, been there for my family. And so, working with people, I'm like, you know what? You can have all of that and actually achieve even more by getting out of your way in the ways that you self-sabotage, and noticing what it is that's actually compromising you, quieting that, overcoming it, and stepping into something that's so much more amazing because you're acting from the best parts of yourself rather than from that fear or anxiety, frustration, pushing. It's more you're looking at what am I being pulled towards rather than what am I pushing myself towards. It's like becoming an excellent surfer riding the waves rather than constantly trying to keep your head above water.
That is a really good analogy too. I think that one of the things that I hear you saying is it's okay to be a high achiever, and it's okay to be really hard on yourself. But those are moments. Those aren't the whole picture, right? Those are moments that we're just passing through and not living in.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like, if you put your hand on a burner, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, but that's good because that tells you, okay, there's something to be aware of here. But how long do you want to keep your hand on that burner? That's the question. It's like you use that as an alert and then you take your hand off. Oh, there's something showing up. Let's get curious about what that is. Not, okay, let's keep my hand on this burner and stay in frustration, anxiety, stress, uncertainty, all of that.
One of my biggest accomplishments came out of letting go and
Yeah.
just being in that moment and seeing and experiencing what was going around me. And so when you do get out of that space, you actually become more creative. You're able to see those things because all those obstacles and all those other things aren't in the way.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. It's like if you are in fight or flight and you're just in survival mode, you can't see with that same clarity and focus and awareness and curiosity, creativity. So really it's, what we're talking about is shifting from one region of the brain to another region that serves us so much better in life.
Alicia, I love you and I love your energy. And I know that you have something you want to offer all of the listeners. So I'm going to let you share that with them.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to because I love connecting with people. And in doing so, for those that would like to connect with me, I invite you to come to my website at coachlisha.com. It's Lisha. And on the main page, I have a link that you can click. It's a button for a free success boosting session. And it's an hour-long session where I'm happy to talk to you about what's going on, what you might want support with, and actually do some free coaching with you. I also have a mental fitness area, and you can have a mental fitness boosting session. I have a great assessment that I will share with all of your wonderful listeners. So yeah, reach out, connect with me, and I'm happy to support you.
I love that. I think all of you should grab that. And because very rarely does a coach come on here and give you an hour of their time. So I would definitely grab that. And we'll also put all of these in the show notes so that if you're listening and you're driving or something, you can always go to the show notes on iTunes and grab them. So thank you so much, Lisha, for being with me and like bearing with me while I learned your beautiful name.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for the privilege of being a guest on your amazing show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.